Is that a breakup?
I think we have a situation right here.
On the Feeling Station.
Welcome to The Feeling Station, a podcast that touches on breakup stories that people would like to talk about with a view to give lessons that they learned from their experiences. We hope you find the stories entertaining, but more importantly, meaningful given the lessons we're going to learn from today's episode. Now, with me in studio, just in the nick of time. Oh my goodness. I don't even know how to say thank you because Boris Johnson has decided to lock everything up in 2 days.
Everything lock off.
And we had time booked for this Saturday? So I got in touch with you last minute. I'm like, hey, do you think we can do something tomorrow? And thank goodness you said yes. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
As you know, what we do in this podcast, we talk about breakup stories. And today we're going to be talking about yours specifically. And to get the ball rolling, I've picked up a name from you, and I want to keep it local, right? So I'm giving you a name from Zimbabwe. Right? I'm giving you a name from Zimbabwe. And this is, it's in Ndebele, and the name is Nothando.
Okay.
And if I have it right, that's got to do with, it's what, mother of love?
Yes.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so... How much love do you have within yourself as a person?
I have a lot of love.
A hell of a lot of love.
A lot of love.
And in the episode we're going to talk about today, who had more love? Did you or he had more love?
I did.
Why'd you say so?
I think I'm a loving person, Tindo, you know. And it was, I mean, we'll get into it, but it was a short sort of relationship / situation. I'll explain.
When we say short, how long are we talking about?
I think we're talking 5 months.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it's interesting, and I still remember it.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Yeah.
So your name is Nothando, right? I need you to pick out a name for the guy that you're going to talk about today. What are you going to call him?
Can we call him Hush Puppy Senior?
Hush Puppy Senior, you know. Do you know the reason why I'm saying that is the Hush Puppy that I know is the one that got locked up in Dubai.
Yes.
So is this guy similar to that one?
Listen to the story. And how old is Hush Puppy, by the way?
I don't know.
I think I don't know. So I don't know if whether it's senior or junior, but I think my guy was a little bit older.
Okay, so we're going with Hush Puppy Senior.
Yes.
This is going to be very interesting. Okay, again, one of the things that's great about this podcast is we have lessons that people learn things from. So what is it that you would like your listeners to listen to from your story today? What would you like them to learn?
Okay, I think I'll probably think of more lessons as we talk.
Go. Okay.
But firstly, just trust your gut. Like, if your gut is telling you no, just trust it.
Okay.
Even if you've been wrong before,
trust it.
Trust it.
Okay.
And red flags.
What about red flags?
Just don't ignore red flags.
Okay.
Don't ignore red flags. And another thing is, don't I think start a relationship whilst being apart. So whilst being in long distance.
Interesting. That's going to be very interesting because a lot of people now with this online dating thing start relationships apart. And I mean, and look at COVID. We can't even be in intimate, close spaces. So I'll be interested in tapping into that and see how that turns out.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so is that all your lessons?
Yeah, and I'll think of others.
Okay,
as we talk.
so just to go over the lessons again: 1, trust your gut. 2nd, don't ignore red flags, and thirdly, don't start whilst being apart. Right. So let's get into this. How did Nothando and Hush Puppy get their thing going?
Okay. So I knew him through friends, cousins. So I think I met him initially at my cousin's birthday party. That was about, when was that? I think 2015 or so. So I knew of him. Okay. And I followed him on Instagram at the time.
Yes.
And just someone that I knew.
So I mean, just before you go too far, when you met him at this party initially, did you think, "Oh, okay," or you thought absolutely nothing about him?
I thought, "Oh, okay," but I didn't think of it as him and I. Like he was flirting, but I think flirting with everyone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he might have been flirting with everyone, but I get the impression he was flirting with you and it caught your attention only because you said you went to social media and you connected with him.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
what did you want to see on that social media
No, I
profile?
just wanted to see like what he was about and, you know, and everything.
Okay.
And his social media was quite interesting. He travels a lot. And he's into some of the same sort of things that I'm into.
Okay.
So like I enjoy politics, social issues. So, you know, he gave that vibe of, you know, being plugged into that kind of world.
And that tickled your fancy?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so you've checked out his profile on social media, and then what happened?
Then years went by. And I followed him, he followed me, and we used to like, you know, like if you post something, like I'd like his pictures, he'd like mine, you know, we were playing like this tango for a while, just commenting here and there, and there was nothing. And then, so one time I was like, because he travels a lot, and I was like, oh, this is quite interesting, and then I followed him on Facebook, and then I realized that on Facebook, like he goes into depth about like social issues, like politics, and I'm like, oh my God, I love this. This is my Barack Obama.
So just whilst you're on that, I'm picking up something here. So you followed him where? First on Instagram, is that right? And then you followed him
on Facebook.
Now, were you the first one to follow him and all of this stuff, or there's some social media things that he followed you first?
That's an interesting one. I suspect I requested, and that's because we have a lot of mutual friends. Or I think he's someone that, you know.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you why I'm asking that question, because I have a friend of mine who has a theory that the first person to request someone on social media is the interested party.
He had my eye. So one time, right, he posted a picture on Instagram. So I went on Instagram, I, you know, tapped to the hearts.
Yeah.
And then I sent him his picture in his DMs. And I was like, where in the world are you? I mean, I wasn't... is that shooting a shot?
It could be. I really don't know. Shooting shots happens in different ways nowadays.
But it was the first time we're DMing, right? So I was like, where in the world are you?
Okay.
And then he was like, where in the world do you want me to be?
Hey.
And then we just started talking. So this was now about a year plus after I'd met him. Like I said, there was nothing. We were just social media friends. So we just started flirting. He was like, oh, da, da, da. And then he said he's going to be in London, you know, in a month or so. We exchanged numbers, and we just used to, you know, talk. And I was, you know, just really interested in just him as a person.
Okay.
So, fast forward, he's now in London. We meet up. No, so initially, there's a cousin of mine whose friend was having a birthday party. And then when we were talking, we just realized that, we were both going to the same place.
Party,
right? So we're like, oh, cool. It'd be nice to sort of see you. And again, at that point, there was nothing. Like, we were just flirting back and forth. And I met him, you know, at that. It was kind of like a birthday / Christmas do sort of thing. I met him there, and he was like, oh, you know, hey, whatever. We just started talking. And we, like, I remember, like, there's a point where we just sort of, like, talked for, like, 2 hours.
Non-stop.
Just talking about things that people would find boring.
Okay.
Like politics, talk about Pan-Africanism,
right.
Thomas Sankara,
wow.
and all the stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like he's got so much depth. And actually, because like we'd gone to that, like I said, it was a / Christmas party. He brought me like a little gift. Well, it wasn't like, it was like chocolates. And I was like, oh, that's a nice touch. That's really nice. Yeah. And then we just continued talking, and then we met again because he was like, oh, I'm in London for a month or so. And actually, he used to spend a lot of his time like in Dubai or Congo or New York, right? So we met up again, and the vibe was there, you know, and we're like, and he was really like showy, like a showy kind of person.
Okay.
And initially I was like, oh, you know, this is just somebody that I'm getting to know. You know, there's nothing to it, sort of thing. But the conversations that started becoming longer, and then like messaging every day, and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. But then, you know, when you start interacting with someone, you don't think, oh, this may be the person. So it's only after that you're like, oh, let me ask like key questions, right? Like, you know, what are you about and all that stuff. So initially, I asked him, and you know, he had kids.
Was that a problem for you?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
But okay, this is gonna sound so bad, right? So this is where like the red flags thing comes in, and so one of the questions that I asked him was like, "Oh, how many kids do you have?" And he was like, "Oh, I've got 3 kids. You know, just want to be upfront with you. Is that a problem?" Yeah, I was like, it's not a problem, but it's interesting. Like, I'd like to, you know, find out a little bit more.
Yeah.
So then I asked him, I was like, how many, you know, like it is a kid with one person or whatever, you know? And then he was like, no, with 2. I was like, oh, okay, fine.
You can deal with 2. Yeah, I'm cool with 2.
I don't know, but I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So let's pin that. Let's pin that because we'll come back to that.
Okay, pinned.
it's pinned, right?
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay. But I think for me, the thing that was just interesting was just what he was about, like how he viewed the world and, you know, talking about what he wanted to do. So we started having, you know, the conversation. So at the time, I think he went to the Congo for work. It was sort of after Christmas. And when he was now away, that's when we were now having those intense conversations. Right?
Okay. This is starting to make sense
This
now.
is what I was saying about the distance thing,
yes,
right?
yes.
Because when he was in London, it was, you know, flirting, getting to know each other. But when he was now away, it was when...
It became more intense.
Yeah. And then he was now, you know, saying, you know, I really like you. I see a future with you.
Okay.
I'd like to build with you. I think we have the same worldview, and all that stuff. So, and one of the things, you're gonna laugh, right? So this was 2016 going to 2017. So one of the things he was like, you know, I really want to settle down. And I was like, oh, but why haven't you settled down before? He was like, you know what, it just hasn't worked out. You know, are you going to hold that against me? And I was like, okay, no. And he was like, you know, I really want to settle down and I want to run for office in 2019 because where he's from, they were having general elections in 2019.
Really?
Right? So he was like, so he was in the process of, you know, being part of this like new political party.
Right.
And in my mind, all I saw was me being Michelle Obama because like that is me. Like that. Do you know what it is, Tinto? It was, and the reason I say like trust your gut, I think I think his life was like spectacles, like compelling.
Yeah.
So first of all, he travels, like, and I'm like, I want to travel. Like, this is the life that I want. Like what? Like politics, like political power. Like I'm attracted to men like with power. Like I find that you know exciting.
He was ticking a lot of the right boxes.
He was
for you,
ticking a
wasn't
lot of
he?
the right boxes,
Yeah.
and then I was now thinking that you know maybe the other stuff. You know, hey, like when Winnie Mandela married Mandela, like he had kids and all that stuff. Like, but you know, no one mentions the first wife.
Yeah, no,
sort
true,
of thing.
true.
Do you know what I mean? So
True.
for me, I was now like looking at this, you know, and he was like, anyway, I'm from Zim, right? And then he's from another part of Southern Africa.
Okay, right.
Not from Zim.
Just from another country.
Not from Zim.
Yeah.
But then, like, in my mind, I was like, oh my God, like, this is going to be like, you know, like power couple. This is like Grasha Michelle
Wow.
Mandela part 2, right?
Wow.
So it kind of played into just all these sort of like fantasies that I had. And I wonder if maybe I had sort of displayed that and he knew that that was the angle.
Okay.
Right. So 2016, towards the end of 2016, he's like, you know, like he's really putting the pressure. But then there was still something I was like, okay.
What sort of pressure?
Oh, to say, you know, let's be formal. Like he was like, you know what? I want to have a girl. I want to tell the world that I'm with you. And also because this is the plan that I have, you know, for 2019.
So when he says let's be formal, is he talking about you guys actually becoming a couple or you guys becoming fiancé? And
so both.
Wow,
So he was like, so he was quite, you know, like quite quick. He's like, you know what? I want us to, you know, to start telling the world that we're together.
Yeah.
And I want us to get married.
Yeah.
And I think he was like, oh, like it was 6 months down. Like it was all quite rushed. And he was like, oh, I want you to move to my place in London because he had a place in like, so it was all the sort of right things, you know, because, you know, I do want to get married and all that stuff. So it felt right, but there was still something in me that was a bit like, I'm not sure. And I kept saying to him, let's wait for you to come back to London and then we talk face to face and then, you know, we agree that this is what we're doing.
So these reservations you were having at that point, what were they founded on? Why did you just have this niggling feeling? What did you see?
So that's the thing. I'm not too, like, I think I started having the reservations before I started seeing certain things. I think it was just the fact that I was like, you know, he's traveling so much. Like I want someone who's there, who's like close, in the same
someone
space.
Who's nearby, yeah.
And I just wanted us to kind of like look at each other, like, and because again, he was going really quick. He wasn't just talking about being together as a couple. He was talking about getting married and, you know, everything. And I was like, well, for those conversations, like, I'll wait for you to come back. So that was sort of my reservation. And then what happened is New Year's Eve, it's like New Year, you know, I went to church, you know, for like night vigil, like getting ready to get into the new year properly and everything. And then, you know, 2017, like 1st of January. And then he sent me like the nicest like message and like sort of, you know, professing his love and saying, you know, this is the real deal. You know, can I just, you know, make him a happy man? And I was like,
what a way to start the new year.
Who am I to come in between what God is doing in my life?
Yes, Lord.
Particularly on the 1st of January. I was like, you know what I mean? You're like, we're starting off the new year. Look at this. You know?
So did you go to church that New Year's Eve? Because if you're doing that, you did?
Yeah.
And normally for those things, you know, some of these ministers are very quick to say, this is your year, you know, take it, receive it.
Yes, the declaration.
So you're like, yes.
January, a month of testimonies. I said, yes, amen, that is me. So the next day, I'm like looking at this, I'm like, look at this, right?
Look at God.
I said, you know what? I said, the word of God says, test me and see.
Yes.
I said, you know what? Let me throw my reservations to the side. And I was like to him, okay, cool, you know.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. But, you know, I still do want to, you know, like see you so that we know we can have it like as a formal thing. Anyway, and funny enough, like the next day, like the next 2 days, I was just so unsettled. Like just, I couldn't sleep. Like I didn't feel at peace with my decision.
Jeez, talk about a serious gut, eh?
Yeah.
Your gut here was saying big things to you.
And it's never happened to me before and even after. But that was, I remember I couldn't sleep. But then in my mind, and that's why I say to trust your gut, is because I was like, I've been wrong before. You know, there's people that I've liked and loved and thought, okay, this is it. But I was horribly wrong.
Yeah.
So my thinking was, okay, let me go against what I'm feeling because I cannot trust what I'm feeling because it's never given me the right, you know, outcomes.
Yeah.
So anyway, fast forward. In January, this guy is now in New York, right? And we're talking every day, whatever. This is where the hush puppy stuff starts, right? So he's in New York, and then he says to me, like we get like, you know, when he was flying from Dubai to New York, I was like, okay, cool. He gets to New York on the phone. And then he's like, oh, you know what? I've had an issue with my luggage and I don't have my wallet on me. Right. Right. And then I'm like, oh, damn. Okay. He's like, oh, you know, it should be sorted in a few days. I'm like, and then he goes to me, he's like, oh, you know, can you help me out? Yeah,
Help me out. Are we talking financially?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He's like, oh, can you? So initially he was like, oh, can you help me? And I was like, what do you mean? And I was like, oh no, I don't really have anything. He was like, oh, at least can you like, can you get me food? I'll give you the address of the hotel where I'm at. And I was like, this is strange, but at the same time, I'm like,
it's your boo, you know.
Yeah, I like this guy, and because I've met him in London, and because he presents this flashy lifestyle, and even like when you know, we met in London, like he took me to like a fancy place, and if you go on his socials, I'm like, oh, you know what, you know. Things do happen, and I must say, actually, one of the things before, when he was saying, you know, he and I need to be serious, one of the things that he did, he introduced me to his brother, and also to a cousin of his.
Okay.
Right. And they're all in London or near London at the time anyway. And his whole thing was like, that's now your brother.
Okay,
you know,
so
he's going to take care of you when you're there and everything, right?
So I was bringing in the family, which is sort of cement things for you.
Exactly,
Okay.
like to make me comfortable. You know, he's like, you know, that's your brother. You know, I was telling him about you, and the brother and I actually like exchanged calls at some point. And I was like, okay, so I was starting to feel a little bit like, oh, okay. And then I say to him, well, why don't you ask your brother? Because he was like, oh, my brother has all my cards in London or whatever. And then he was like, oh, no, he's sleeping now. Then he was like, oh, but if you help me, like, he'll sort you out.
Okay.
Whatever. And I was like, okay. So then I got him whatever, right? I was like, oh, you know, this is my man, you know.
Let's talk about that. How much are we talking about?
Oh, no, it was like a meal. So it was, I don't know, £20 or something.
Cool. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. But I thought it was strange. Because I was like, what do you mean? Like, because I kept asking, like, what do you mean you don't have your card? He's like, oh, you know, it got lost on the, you know, when I was coming over, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. But I don't know, just something in me was like, okay. And then what happened, then we were talking about the kids thing, right? So he then mentioned that his eldest, he was like, oh, you know, she and I are really close because when her mom passed on, I was like, oh, I you know, no, this is new. And I was like, oh, so you say that your 3 kids have 2 moms. So there's only one left. Like how do you work? Oh, and then he basically was like, no, like her mom passed away. So he had 3 kids with 3 different women, and he wasn't counting the one who died.
Wow, that is mad.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was like, what?
That is mad.
But then at the same time, I was kind of like, oh, maybe he didn't want to talk about it, and you know, maybe I don't know, maybe he's embarrassed by the whole like 3 kids with 3 different women. But I was like, oh, that's quite something to like omit
and it's
one altogether.
It's a massive red flag.
Yeah. So I was just like, what the heck is going on? And then later on, I was like, oh, hey, so what's happening with your cards? Like, you know, can you sort me out? And then he was like, oh, no. Speak to my brother. He'll sort you out. So I sent his brother a message and I was like, oh, you know, hush puppy said, and then the brother called me and was like, oh, what happened? And I explained to him. And then he was like, oh, okay, give me your details. And then he transferred money into my account. And I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Okay.
You know, we're sorted.
Yeah.
We're fine. We're fine. But we'll pin that because I'll come back to that, right?
Okay.
So then another thing is on Instagram again, which is where we met and everything. Because now I'm now invested, right? So I'm now looking at, and it was at the time when Instagram would show who like your likes, in on the activity page, like you'd see whatever. So I noticed that there was a lady who kept commenting under his pages, right? Okay, and another red flag, I should say. Like this makes me sound so silly, but he had his ex on his page.
How did you know it was his ex?
Oh, he told me, and because they were a couple clearly.
Okay.
So, but the pictures were like a year old.
So he still had pictures of his ex on his profile.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I remember when I asked him, he was like, "Oh no, I'll remove them." He was just like, "Oh, it's just been an intense time and all that stuff, right?"
Papi.
So I knew what the ex looked like.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay. He was like, no. If it bothers you, when I remember, I'll remove them.
take them off.
I just haven't gone back on my Instagram. And I was like, okay, maybe, that's fair enough. So the girl who was commenting on his stuff, whatever. So I must say, I'm really bad with social media snooping. I will find out anything, right? Which is not a good thing because I cause myself heartbreak. But I will find out anything.
Yeah.
So then remember, I was now his friend on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I found her on Facebook there, and she's like
So you went to Facebook to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I found her there as well.
Now you hold that for 1 sec. What were you really looking for?
No, because they were flirting.
Were they?
Right, the exchanges were flirting.
The comments?
Yeah.
Okay, give me an example of one of the comments.
Things maybe he would even put a heart under her picture or whatever. And then there was a time when I remember I told you that before the new year, he was in Congo.
Yes.
So this lady was in Congo, she's a musician in Congo.
Okay.
Right? And there was a picture that he posted on his Instagram where it was a group of them and she was there as well. Right? So there was all that stuff that was happening.
Okay.
And then this is the big one, right? So one time, because I was now obsessing, so I'd go on her page, and he put a comment. So she put a picture of herself, and he put a comment. It was like "Je t'aime," right? So I was like, "Je t'aime." I was like, "Listen, I didn't do French in school,
But I know. You know what je t'aime means.
But I know what that means, right?" And then I took a screenshot, sent it to him. I was like,
"Yo,
dude,
what's this?
What's going on?" And then he was like, "No, I meant I love it." Not I love you, right? I was like, what? And then I actually went on Google. I was like, let me type in what je t'aime means. Because that's how much he had gaslit me. Because I was like, yo, je t'aime? So anyway, that was that. And then later on, so this is all happening in January, as soon, when we're supposed to be,
honeymoon phase.
Yeah, going through, and there's all this stuff, but I'm trying to let it not bother me because I'm trying to think of the big picture. Remember, Michelle Obama.
So come again. This is happening January, and at the turn of the year, that's when he sent you that text to say, "I want you." Bruh, things were escalating real quick.
Yeah. No, I'm saying and all me discovering this. But I think another thing is because previously I was not looking as intently.
Yeah.
But now I sort of had So there was a part of me that was like, oh, maybe I'll give him time to sort out his admin stuff. All the
all the bits and pieces.
Yeah, all the bits and pieces that need to be sorted out. So I was like, okay. And then then the next thing that happened is so this was the thing that kind of took the cup, right? So later on he goes to me, so he was supposed to be traveling from one state to another in the US. And we were on the phone, we're talking. He was like, oh, he was having issues with getting a flight. So I was helping him, obviously, being,
What help
supportive.
are we talking about?
Oh, looking for flights. And then the next thing he's like, oh, you know, my card's not working. You know, they locked my card in London. Can you like have a look? And I was like, okay. So I kept sending him like, oh, there's this flight. And then he was like, oh, you know, could you get me like a ticket and then I'll reimburse you. And then at that point I was like, nah. And actually I really didn't have the money, right? I just didn't have the money to be spending. I was like, no. But then I thought, this is
odd.
Like I was like, you know, I was like, okay, fair enough. But again, remember, like even when I'm talking to him, you know, in Dubai, and like at the time he was in Washington, he was like, oh, you know, he's being driven around. So he's giving this like, you know, lifestyle thing. But then I started just being concerned, like, what is happening here? Right. And then Valentine's Day comes, right? So it's Valentine's Day. And I'm like, oh, happy Valentine's. Like, yeah, happy Valentine's. Can't wait to see you when I'm back in London and I'll spoil you and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It's like, in my mind, I'm like, so I'm not getting anything. Okay, fair enough, whatever, all right? And then the next thing, right, I go on his Instagram and he had posted a picture of his ex on Instagram.
What?
Yeah. For Valentine's Day, right?
The same ex that he wrote Je t'aime.
No. Not her.
Another one.
The ex who's on his Instagram, you know, the one that I say that the pictures were like a year old.
Yeah. Oh, that one. Yeah.
That ex who's on his page.
Right.
He posts her. And I'm like, what? And then he wrote in his language, but I didn't... Like I didn't understand, but clearly like people in the comments were like, all I saw were like fire emojis, like bomb signs, like heart and everything. I was like, what? And I remember I took a screenshot and I sent it to my friend because I was like, oh, I knew she spoke that language. Right. And I was like, what does it say? Yeah. And then all she said, she came back, she's like, I don't know, just leave this guy alone. She was like, just leave this guy alone. I was like, but I was like so heartbroken. And then I did the same thing. Now, like, I'm now fully, like, in, like, you know, my feelings. In, like, I'm like, what the heck is going on? You know, I was distraught. I was like, he was like, no, you don't understand. You know, I need her help for something.
Something like what?
Because she was in the country where he's from.
Yes.
And he was saying, oh, you know, there's some business stuff that we need. So I just need to be nice to her because I need her to do. And I was like, what the heck? And then again, he was like, no, you know, but I'm, you know, what I said still stands and all that stuff. I'm coming to London next month or whatever. So and I was just like, but that's when that was for me like the beginning of the end, because I was like, oh, this is ridiculous, because I'm already kind of like, you know, I've ignored, you know, some key things that are important to me.
You had the perfect chance to leave right there.
Yeah.
So what happened? Why did you stick around?
No, so I didn't stick around for much longer, but to be honest, I liked him. Like I liked him a lot. And I think there was a part of me that, like I said, you know, when you've done things before and the outcome hasn't been great, you're thinking to yourself, okay, is it because of the distance? Maybe if he comes back, can we actually really, you know, solidify this thing? But I think for me, like, that's why I say for me, that was the beginning of the end, because I was just like, what's going on? But you know, there's that thing where you've been talking to your friends and so there's the embarrassment that sort of comes as well.
Yeah.
Right? And then check this guy out. Then so I remember this because it was now March, right? And it was like Women's Day. International Women's Day. And then like he posted me on International Women's Day. And then he was like, look, you want? Isn't you wanted me? He's like, Valentine's is just another day. Like, I posted you on International Women's Day. But the thing was like, oh, I'm so proud of this. So proud of this young visionary. I'm so proud of this young visionary. Yo! And that was supposed to appease me. Oh, that was so sad. He's like, oh, and then he put heart, but it means nothing. It's International Women's Day. Right? And I'm just like, wow, like what is going on? So anyway, after that, I think that's when really it just started. And I must say with the Valentine's Day thing, right?
Wait a minute.
Okay, God.
So this International Women's Day thing, did it?
God.
Did it piss you off? Were you like upset? What was your reaction?
So the thing is,
because
I wasn't upset.
I was gonna say there's two ways of looking at it, right? It's International Women's Day. Do you get what I mean? It's like the recognition of the full, wholesome, great, amazing woman.
Yeah.
So on one hand, it's actually one of the best days to do it.
Okay.
Do you know when the focus is not on guys and girls like Valentine's? Did you get it? So maybe he was sending you the right message to say, look, this is how much I value you. I'm going to have you up to an International Women's Day.
And then do you know what he said? He said, we're going on a journey. Next year, I'll post you on Valentine's. I was like, yo. He was like, oh, and I must say, like, even before with the Je t'aime story, he was like, oh, I didn't think you were petty. I thought you were mature and all that stuff. And then I do have to go back to the Valentine's Day story because what happened is, the Congo lady, my sister wife. So I was now going on her like Facebook, Instagram, and she was posting like struggle posts. You know those posts when you know that someone is going through it.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, so two of us were heartbroken. Like two of us were. It was like, don't trust men. Focusing on myself. Oh, God closes the door because there's something greater. You know those kind of struggle posts.
Yeah, that should have rung a bell for you then that you're not really in this thing with this guy on your own. As in, she was clearly like, a part of that.
Yeah, no. That confirmed it to me. That I was like, whatever. But I think in my mind, there was still something where I was sort of like holding out for him coming back to London.
Yeah.
Because that's why I was like, it was like a whirlwind 5 months. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, come back so that we have that face to face and we talk. And maybe these are just things that, you kind of need to close doors on before we end.
Yeah.
So that's the story. But what I love about time and God is because, so the reason I say that this guy is Hush Puppy Senior is it's always been one of those like relationships where I've looked back and I was like, was it like, did I miss? I don't know. It's like, I know that my gut was telling me no, right? And there's probably things that I've missed from the story, like that were just crazy. I think it was the first time that I've really been gaslit in my life.
Yeah.
Like where you're like, wait, am I going mad? Like, but then another thing is, so he's somebody that I still used to follow him and all that stuff. But I think I got to a point where, it ended. Well, I met someone. You know how these things go. Someone else like.
So the last straw for you was what? What got you to the point that this guy is really not it for me?
I think I felt like. So I think definitely after sort of like the Women's Day thing.
Yeah.
I think it was like.
You're like, this guy doesn't rate me.
Yeah, this guy doesn't rate me, and the whole kind of like. This is now sort of like 3 months of, I'm coming back to London, and then, he's not coming back, and it's a bit, but what he wanted was, like me to like be like, yeah, I'm there, like fully committed. And I felt like I was overextending myself. So like I would help him with stuff. Like I mentioned to you that they were doing like stuff in politics. So like I would help with like writing reports and stuff. And it kind of got to the point where I was like, oh no, I feel like this is too much. But like I said, I was helped to end that relationship when I met another young gentleman. And I was like, oh. So it was easier to kind of let go. But anyway, fast forward. So it was quite intense. He was and I said like, he was really like, okay, let's get married. Let's do all of this. I want you to quit work. That's one thing that he said. He said, I'd like you to quit work.
And do what?
He's like, and we work together. He was like, oh, you know, you're really sharp. You're talented. I think, you know, you could be part of my business. Like we could figure out how this works. And, you know, all the big talk and stuff. But anyway, this is it's 2017. So we're now in 2020. So like 3 years so after, I actually came across another young lady, right?
Yeah.
Who's actually like she put on like her social media, like that he owes her money.
Oh.
Right? But in her case, like she's saying he owes her thousands. And the things that she's saying sound familiar.
Oh,
right? Because she's like, oh, food. He asked for food.
Oh,
he asked for
man.
this, and that's what. So the brother thing. That's why I said let's pin that, because now in hindsight, I'm like,
Yes.
oh, did the brother just like give me money because maybe he knows his
Yeah.
brother?
Yeah. And for all we know, he might have been in on it.
Maybe, but
yeah,
he gave me the
yeah.
But I mean, he gave me the. So I'm now thinking like, is it one of those cases where he was just like, oh, my brother's messed up, and he's told this girl that I will give her the money.
So let me do the good thing, yeah.
You know, so and then I'm thinking, you know, there was that incident which never set right with me.
Yeah, yeah.
But
he just brushed it off.
I just brushed it off.
Yeah.
And then there was the whole, you know, the plane where he was like, oh, you know, could you help me? And then I was like, this man asks for money like
a bit too much.
A bit too much, particularly for someone who presents himself
The
as
way they do.
having money, right?
Jeez.
So, and then this happened like I'm saying, I came across this like recently, and the story just, I was like, I believe this.
Yeah.
Right. And it just showed me that I think in life you should trust your gut. And in many instances, you never know what happens at the end. So you may walk away from situations and think, oh, maybe, you know, I didn't handle that properly. Maybe I missed a chance. But I've just been fortunate enough to see like the full circle to be like, oh, actually, that was such a great decision.
So, you know, since your lessons are 1, trust your gut.
Yeah.
2, don't ignore the red flags, and don't start whilst being apart. I just want to touch on the first one about trusting your gut. Since that experience, so you came from a point where you trusted your gut, didn't turn out right.
Yeah.
So you said, okay, maybe let me not trust it now.
Yeah.
Where do you stand now? Do you really, really trust your gut now?
No, I really trust my gut now. And
like,
it's been,
like 100%?
Yeah, and it's been reinforced by finding out that situation. And it's a situation that I just found out now. And that's why I'm saying, like, I just found out in the last 2-3 months, right? And I'm saying that for most of us, you may never, you know, get that
validation and
validation to see that I was right.
Yeah.
But actually... Yeah, maybe it's because I was at a point where I was not trusting my gut again, and I just had to get to see that information to be like, yeah.
So where's Hush Puppy now?
I think he's in Dubai.
You think?
According to the lady on
Okay.
her social media.
Are
So
you sure you definitely don't know where Hush Puppy is?
I don't. And funnily enough, I was supposed to meet with him beginning of this year because he was like, oh, I'm in London, let's meet up. But for some reason, I think what happened is we agreed that we're going to meet at a certain time.
Yeah.
And as I was on my way, he was like, oh, I'm really, really sorry. I'm running late. Can we meet like 2 hours later? And I was like, oh, heck no. Like, we agreed to meet at 6. Like, I'm not going to stay. And for me, I'm just like, oh, wow, thank God. I feel like I kept being like prevented.
Yeah.
You know, And even the fact that you know, when we initially like met and everything in London, it was just kind of like friendly flirting, like it wasn't, you know, like full blown relationship.
Yeah.
And then the distance stuff happened. So I was like, oh, you know, I thank God was protecting me, but I didn't realize it then, and I'm just only realizing it now.
Bruh. I've been dying to ask this question.
Yeah.
What did Hush Puppy do for a living, really?
So he says he's into oil and gas. So explaining the travels to like Congo, Rwanda. Working for like a gas company. But who knows?
Yeah. Dodgy Hush Puppy. But nah, that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, so just revisiting those 3 lessons. The first one is trust your gut. If it's telling you one thing, don't ever doubt it, because 90% of the time it's correct.
Yeah.
And then the second lesson that you had was, if you see any red flags, do not ignore them. I think your very first red flag was from the number of kids versus the number of mothers.
Yeah.
You know, already that's a bit like, whoa. Do you know what? You potentially dodged the bullet, because maybe you could have been baby mama number 4.
Exactly.
You know, quite easily.
Yeah.
And then the last one, don't start a relationship when you're apart. That's a good lesson. But with COVID here and the difficulty that people have meeting generally, man, I don't know how that's going to pan out for people. It's
I think
a tough one.
It's a tough one. It's on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah,
I think if it's someone that you've known, but you now just happen to be apart.
Yeah, then it's a different story.
That's fine. I think if it's someone that you do not know,
and you're starting from zero,
I feel like you should get to know each other, but not commit until see each other.
Nice.
Because I just think there's a certain energy that being face to face and in the same space has.
True.
And also, if that person's lying to you, if you spend a day or 2, you can pick it up. Like if they're, you know, getting calls and they're like, you know, it seems dodgy, and you know they're like
they're a bit fidgety and all that.
With their phone and stuff like that. There's things that you
can pick
see,
up.
that within 3-4 months of talking you can't. So I'm not that I'm against long distance. I just think unfortunately you can end up building castles in the air.
Right, that makes sense.
With long, so that's why I think it's important to have that physical. But if it's someone that you've known, fine. But still ask questions. Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you very much, Notando, for that very interesting story. Now I'm going to try and see if I can do a little fishing myself on social media, see how deep I can get to finding this Hush Puppy dude. But you also have been listening to another episode of The Feeling Station. I'm your host, Tinto, and I look forward to catching you in the next one. Peace.
Tell me what you're feeling.
Satis on Daro Raini and Chake Zain.
Tell me what you're feeling. Now that it's over.
Satis on Daro Raini and Chake Zain.
Let me talk about my feelings. Let me talk about my feelings, yeah.
Urudoi motoru noto kujidziro amai.
Kujidziro amai. Love is a fire.
Urudoi motoru noto kujidziro amai.